Hey everyone, thank you for watching. In this video, we're going to show you how to draw the bark of a tree. So grab your pencils and let's get drawing. The first thing you need to understand about this drawing is that we're just going to draw the outer shape of the bark. So we're just going to do kind of a somewhat of a piece of the bark like this. I'm not going to draw the whole tree and all that with the leaves. So in this kind of area that we're going to draw the bark, what I'm going to do is just kind of establish, again, this kind of zone. And what we'll do is just kind of draw some darker areas, and we're going to build upon those. So if this is one of the dark areas, this might be another one over here, and maybe one more over here. We could have another longer piece over here, and maybe something down here. We might have a piece that kind of looks like that. Something like that, something like that. And even this piece could continue all the way up as well. A lot of the bark, this is kind of your average tree, obviously, just like a typical tree. A lot of the bark that is kind of shown typically does have longer lines. Not necessarily short kind of zones, or these are the indentations, right? So this the dark areas here are the indentations. I'm actually just going to remove this box that I drew. It's kind of messing up with the actual drawing of the bark, so we'll just kind of get rid of that real quickly there as well, even at the top. If you're not aware, bark's really just the covering of the tree. The bark is the outer part, kind of the protective layer of a tree, keeps that inner part of the tree trunk safe. And I think bark typically exists on trees, but as well as on shrubs, even other plants like vines, shrubs, trees, they all have bark on there. Okay, so we're kind of starting to draw the bark in terms of what this looks like. I'm just going to continue and keep drawing it. It's not easy to draw bark, so I thought I would kind of challenge everyone here to just kind of see if you can do that as well. Okay. Now, once you kind of draw the inner parts here, you might want to just get a bit of a darker tone in some of these as well. So kind of grab an 8B and just kind of thicken up some of these darker areas, right? This is all we're doing here, is just adding in some thicker areas here, okay? Obviously the area that we're doing is the indentations. These are the real darkest and deepest, thickest parts of the bark, and all of the white that you see over here is really just the part that kind of protrudes a lot farther off the tree, right? So anything that's white is really going to pop off. Anything that's dark right here is deep inside and kind of a crevice-like piece, okay? So that's kind of what we're drawing over here. It is random, so anything that you kind of draw over here is really meant to be random in nature, okay? You can still see those lines from before. Hopefully we can kind of clear those off as we continue to build out this drawing, okay? So I kind of use the 8B to darken it up, but let's jump back to maybe something like a 5B. And in some of these lines, what you also want to do is just add in what's going to be the starting point to some kind of character that exists on the white part of the bark, right? So you kind of have some lines that go up and down, among other things, but you just want to kind of add some of these lines on here as well. Okay, so we're going to do that sort of quickly because we're going to come back to this and we're going to kind of do more with this, but So hopefully you're following along, and you can kind of see that I'm just drawing the starting point of some of this character that exists on the outer part of the bark. Okay. I'm going to go back to my 7B, and if we're really drawing these pieces of bark, you kind of need to make it look a little more 3D like, because these are protruding off the page, right? So what you want to do is use the finer point of this pencil and just reestablish some of these lines that we started to draw over here. Okay, and by doing so, just drawing a line in the middle, okay, just like this. Okay, great. However, what you need to do is think of this, for example, this white piece over here, right? You can do this if you want to. Just give it a little bit of character. These are coming off the page, right? So don't be afraid to kind of create the ever slightest little bit of 3D effect in which these pieces are coming right off, right? So darker towards the dark spot in the line, and lighter as you go out. So you kind of want to just go like up and away, right? You can use cross hatching, you can use just general shading best practices, but by doing that, you're kind of creating a bit, the ever slightest bit of a 3D effect. You see how that just looks like it's protruding a bit? You just want to do that on all pieces over here. I'm just going to follow through and do this one piece at a time, and I'll just kind of walk you through it. So in doing so, you just want to, again, create the element of that 3D kind of look that's going to be there. I would say that the best way to do that is have your line and go to the left. I think what that is establishing is something somewhat of a light source over here, if our shadowing goes to the left. Okay. If we're going to go to the left, you might want to use your eraser on the right if you accidentally get too much smudging just to the right. So I'm just going to keep kind of drawing some shadows and shading on the left side of the line, and try to smudge just on the left side as well. Okay, I think you'll see this is going to look a lot more realistic as a result. Great, great, great. You can kind of see that. Yeah. How are you doing? Are you drawing? Are you just watching? Are you just here for the facts? Let us know in the comments. We love hearing from you. We love hearing, what you're up to, what you're drawing, and all of that good stuff. Also, let us know in the comments like what we can draw for you. What would you like us to see? What would you like to see us draw? Is there something that you'd like to see us draw? We'll see if we can draw it for you. We're always here to help. Okay. Again, there's our dark line over here, and I'm just going to try to shade to the side. Okay. Like I said, because in real life, these pieces are actually, for the most part, protruding off of the page, off of the tree, coming out at you. You want it to look like it's coming off the page. That's what I was trying to say right there. So that's kind of why I'm drawing it in this particular way. You could also just create some curvature lines on the side as well. Make it look like this piece is really coming off the page. So you could see that I did the shading here, but there's nothing wrong with just creating some of these curvature lines that would exist over here. Just like that. And we're going to continue over here. again, just gonna follow along and just kind of continue this process over here. Don't be afraid to go thick here. We're really just showing that, you know, this tree has a lot of crevices, and that's all we're doing by going thick on the shading. That's all we're doing over here. If your shading ever, you know, you feel like it's not looking realistic, just thicken it up and make it look wider. It might create for a more realistic shading. So I'm just gonna kind of go some of this and some of this. And the last piece we're going to do just over here, we're not going to, again, we're not going to draw the full wrap around of the tree. We're really just going to, just kind of like a cross section, like a piece of the bark. That's really what we're going to draw over here, okay? And again, these are 3D pieces, like they're almost like pieces of the bark that are coming at you. So there's nothing wrong with adding just a little more effect to it and just a little more kind of, I call them curvature lines, kind of lines that you're drawing with the ever slightest little bit of curvature to it, but it does kind of make it look like you're popping this thing off the page, right? That's kind of our goal in doing this. Just like that over there, okay? And if you want, you could even just use your smudge technique a little bit more to just kind of let that lead bleed across the page and just make it look as realistic as possible, okay? So we're starting to really draw what is becoming the crevices and the cross section of a bark. We're kind of gonna keep doing this. Remember, the line I draw to the left is where we want the shading. Our light source is coming from over there, okay? So that's kind of why I'm doing it that way. And of course, like down here isn't really the most critical part of the drawing, so I'm not gonna go below that area there. All right, so we did the bulk of the work with respect to some of the crevices and the lines, but the tricky thing about tree bark is that, how do I say this? There's all these little bits on there. There's really these pieces on there that kind of look like they're just kind of there, and they can be hard to draw. You can see I started to draw them by creating some of these little indentations and things like that. Now we're going to continue that. We're really going to try to make this look as realistic as possible by doing so. Use not the finest, but not the dullest pencil you have, and just kind of create some of these lines that kind of protrude off your darker lines over there, right? All those dark lines we drew, we really want to make sure that they provide the start of these kind of pieces that will appear. Pieces meaning like either a line or a piece of a bark or whatever you want to call it. So we're going to do that. And we're just going to be random with it. We're just going to kind of slowly kind of put this together, and you'll see how it comes together shortly. Okay, so we started to do that. Now the trick here is really, you can grab something like your 7B, and if you're gonna have these lines coming out, you might wanna just take the area right below the line and just add a little bit of shading to it. It might give it just enough of a little bit more of a realistic look to it. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm just putting a little bit of shadow below it, because you don't want to just have that line. That line on its own doesn't really help your cause. It doesn't really help show any kind of realism to it. But you see how if you can get just a little bit of shadowing below that, it might start to look just a little bit better, just a little bit more realistic. And that's all I'm doing here. Okay, any of those lines that I drew, I'm just going to create some shadowing in and around there. Okay, so we're going to do that over here. We missed this whole column. We'll add just a few small ones, small little ones, and we'll do just a small additional shading in there as well. Just something like that. So you could kind of see this starting to come together. Maybe there's another piece right over here. Let's put some shadow and shading right down below there. Just kind of like that. So you can see this is starting to come together. There, I think that will just help pull this together just a little bit more. Okay. What I would say is that in order to kind of complete this or finish this off, grab your 8B, make sure it's sharp enough where you do have a tip and a point, but not too pointy, of course. Okay, that's what I'm just doing on the side. And let's just finish off some of the shading with some darker, some real nice dark pieces, because when you look at a real tree bark, there's some really deep crevices in there, and those deep crevices are really, really dark. And that's exactly what I want to draw here for you. I think at the moment there's some somewhat dark areas, but not dark enough. And you can kind of see this is really what I'm kind of putting in over here, right? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk you through it. I'm going to talk you through it as well. So if you're drawing this as well, make sure that you kind of go through and add in with a nice 8B some nice dark areas. To the left of those lines are light sources over here. And if you've lost your lines, just redraw them and just kind of try to get them back there on the page, okay? We'd love to know if you are a tree lover. Do you love trees? Do you enjoy trees? Do you have a lot of trees where you are? Are you lucky enough to go outside and just go for a walk and be in some trees? I know that I go for walks. I go for walks near my home, and it's quite nice. There's a highway nearby, but it's still okay. There's some trees. I try to block out the noise. No big deal. But how about you? Do you get to see trees? Do you get to visit trees often or not? Let us know. What are your favorite types of trees to see? I know I like a birch tree, although this isn't a birch tree drawing. This is it's kind of your typical either a large, very large oak tree or just a generic tree bark, right? But let us know in the comments, maybe, what do you like? What have you seen? Okay, so notice how I'm also just trying to continue making some 3D effects over here. I want this to look as 3D as possible. I want it to look like it's kind of protruding off the page, right? I want it to look 3D like. Do you ever go canoeing? Because tree bark can also be used to make canoes, believe it or not. Among other things, shingles for homes, roofs, siding, wall coverings, resin, latex, poisons, and a common one is cork. If you've ever seen cork, cork also comes from tree bark, so quite interesting. So I'm starting to become a lot happier with how this is looking. I'd really like to just make sure I'm 100% happy. So I'm just, again, making sure that the dark spots do really show well and do really represent what I'm trying to draw over here. And in order to do that, I might want to just redefine some of these lines that exist. We did it a couple times, and it certainly doesn't hurt to do it once more. So. Maybe we'll just fix up this last piece over here, right? So hopefully you enjoyed that. I think this is going to wrap up our drawing, but please let us know how you did. Did you try to draw? Did it go well? Did you have some challenges? Let us know. Please subscribe. We try to do a new drawing every single day. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.